Hello, I'm Mario Toneguzzi, and this is Taking Care of Business. Joining me today is Kevin Lacey, who is Alberta Director for the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. Thanks for joining us today, Kevin.
Thanks for having me.
Well, you put out an interesting report. CTF put out an interesting report today on political parties and accessing funds from the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy. Can you talk to me this a little bit about what your research found in this area?
Yeah, well, look, this fund was started during the pandemic, and it was designed to try to help businesses that were struggling through the pandemic and through the economy, either because they couldn't do business or their business was affected by the pandemic. But it wasn't just businesses that took advantage of that money. What we found is that political parties across Canada also took advantage of that money. About $3.7 million worth of taxpayers' money that these parties collected. I think the question is that given that all the money the parties get, either through subsidies through the election campaigns, through generous tax credits that happen from donations, these parties already receive a lot of taxpayer money. Why is it now that they had to go into and put their hand in the cookie jar and take money out of those businesses, money that was intended for businesses, to fund their own political needs?
So I'm presuming though that the funds were taken out for the staff that they have in place, right?
Yeah, so this money typically is for helping to fund staff complements of the offices that are in charge. And many of these parties did see dips in the amount of fundraising or amount of revenue that they were bringing in. A lot of that didn't have anything to do with the business or the pandemic. A lot of it had to do with people's perceptions of how the parties were governing or doing. And that's not what the intention of the fund was for.
Okay, then. And when you did the research, did anything within that research, anything specific strike you as kind of interesting, whether it was who benefited, who who took advantage of this?
Well, I think one of the things that surprised us was the amount of money that not just federal parties took. So parties like the Federal Conservative Party took money in this fund, but also provincial parties. So if you look at the United Conservative Party in Alberta, that is the governing party of the province, it took about $151,000 of taxpayer money to help fund its operations through this fund. But other parties like the BC Liberal Party, the Manitoba Liberal Party, the Liberal Party of Newfoundland, the Green Party of BC, all these parties were in on this. This is money that they were getting on top of all of the other generous taxpayer contributions that they get.
So I'm curious, did the Federal Liberal Party dip into this as well?
No, so not every political party took it. I think that's one of the things that's important to mention is it was only a few of the parties that took it. The only federal party, or I'm sorry, the Liberal Party of Canada they took about $1.2 million of money from the fund. The Conservative Party took about $1.1 million, and the New Democratic Party of Canada took about $325,000 of public money. So there was plenty of money to go around for for each of the federal political parties.
I guess from a technical point of view, what they did was not wrong, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
But from a perception point of view, it doesn't look good, right?
Yeah, look, I think, Mary, you make a really good point. I mean, there's nothing in the rules that says that they were not eligible or able to access this money. But I think one of the points we're trying to make is there's a certain obligation when you're a political party and you're in a leadership position that you lead by example. And just because you can take every dollar that you can get your mitts on doesn't mean that you necessarily should. And these political parties knew what this money was for. They knew why the money was put in place, and they took it anyway. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're raising this issue today, is that it really is an issue of leadership, and it's really an issue of what the parties stand for and what their positions are, more so than it's really an indictment of the program itself.
Okay, super. So I'm just curious, did your research or past research look at this subsidy and what other kind of entities, I guess, may have dipped into it.
Yeah, and there are other agencies, other not-for-profits or other groups that were impacted. I think the big difference between the political parties and other groups that were affected is some of them were directly affected by the pandemic for various reasons. So they couldn't, for example, they may not have been able to go out and fundraise to small businesses because they couldn't actually go out and meet small businesses. The difference with political parties is that they already had a pot of money that they could operate their resources from taxpayers. So I think there's a big difference here between these entities and a lot of other either businesses or groups that were affected by the pandemic. And what we're asking for as a result of this is, look, parties took this money. We're now making this public. And now I think it's time for the parties to show the leadership maybe they didn't show the first time and pay the money back.
Okay, super. Kevin, one last thing. Can you just maybe talk a little bit about the Canadian Taxpayers Federation and, how long have you guys been around and what's your purpose?
Sure. We've been around since 1990. And we were a formation of provincial taxpayer groups that started to actually fight the goods and services tax. Was the reason why the group was started. And it makes me chuckle every now and then when I talk about the history, because of course it was founded on a failure, inability to stop the GST. But what a lot of donors and members of the association who fought the GST decided was that we needed to have an effort, not just when taxes were coming in, but on an ongoing basis to try to bring forward lower taxes, less waste, and more accountable government, which is the moniker of our association.
All right, super. Thanks very much, Kevin, for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, that was Kevin Lacey, who is Alberta Director for the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. I'm Mario Toneguzzi. This has been Taking Care of Business. Thanks for joining us today.